started paying our pandemic unemployment assistance benefits, which is great news. We actually stood up that application on April 20th and made some adjustments over the last week and a half or so on some of the claimant messaging within the application and some of the functionality. But it seems to be handling the claims load quite well. And we'll talk in a minute about the difference between these two claims filing systems and why some people must start in one system and others in a separate one. And it's creating, I think, a little bit of claimant confusion that perhaps you could help us clear up. We'll talk about fraud a little bit, and then just kind of some tips for a successful unemployment claim and requesting benefit payments. So as I said, started paying those pandemic unemployment assistance benefits and the pandemic unemployment compensation benefits. Again, I'll let Ryan go over the numbers in greater detail. At last count, I think less than half of the states were actually paying those PUA claims. So, you know, we were able to scope and build and deploy a brand new application in a matter of weeks and also get benefits to people. So we're certainly pleased that those benefits are going out the door. So overall, as the press release noted, we've paid more than 75% of applications filed with us. And I know your question might be what's going on with the other 25%. I'll let Jeff speak to that in a second. But overall, the claims taking process is working well, and we are getting benefits paid out. If you remember last year, we did have a few delays in debit cards and payment delays. Happy to take any additional questions on that. But again, sorry, turn off my chat just for a second so I don't get distracted. You know, just the nature of the volume coming into the system, the number of claims, the number of calls into the call center. Likewise, the file transfer that we do in a batch every night to the bank, we're sending those transfer files to our financial institution in record dollar amounts that we've never transferred in a single transaction before. And again, we're just making adjustments as we can, as we're learning of issues and troubleshooting them and trying to get benefits to people who need them. A couple things we're hearing, and I'm just going to address it because it might be in your questions, and I'll go back and fill in. Some questions about people who are both W-2 earners and 1099 workers, and some confusion about why they start in one system over the other if they are currently a gig worker or self-employed. And the short version is that this is in the federal guidance from the U.S. Department of Labor as part of the CARES Act. And unfortunately, the state's hands are tied, and we cannot make a decision to choose one income stream over another. So the way the guidance is written is if you have any W-2 wages over $2,500 in the base period, so the last 18 months, then you must first go into the regular UI application, submit a claim for those benefits, exhaust those benefits, and then you will move on to the pandemic unemployment assistance. Keep in mind, the claimants will still get $600 a week as they're on that regular UI, as they will when they move on to PUA. Unfortunately, again, it's the feds wrote the guidance to implement the federal benefits, and with very few exceptions, and we do look at these case by case as we're able to, that is the process in receiving these benefits under the CARES Act. So there are, as I said, two different systems to receive these applications. The one system is one that we've had and adjusted over the years as we've tried to modernize all of our UI systems, and that is called MyUI Claimant. That's where they file a claim, manage their claim, get updates on their account information, and that's for regular unemployment. The new system is where PUA claimants will go in, they'll file their claim there, they'll also request payment in the same system. And the other kind of notable difference between these two benefit processes is the regular unemployment certification is every other week, and the PUA certification for benefit eligibility is weekly. So for some claimants who start in one and may never move into the other, there's no real need to explain the differences, but it is one of the things we're getting questions about into the call center. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to speak about the 75% and a few other updates We're also going to talk about job refusals because that is a topic of the day. Workers asking if they don't feel safe returning to work, what are their rights, and what is the process, and what's the department's role. We did implement emergency rules last week. Those are on our website now at coloradoui.gov. We also stood up a new section of the website. So from coloradoui.gov, if you click on returning to work guidance for workers, that will take you to a landing page with some FAQs, a link to the emergency rules, and other resources as we're trying to transition with the safer at home order and folks are returning to work. So with that, let me just, Jeff, let's go ahead and go into your remarks on fraud and what we're seeing, and folks can help us kind of get the word out about how we're detecting fraud and what we're doing in that space. Maybe you could just start talking about the percent of applications we've paid benefits on and what that data point represents.
Sure, happy to share. Yeah, I'll start with the 75%. That's the number of benefits paid to claimants since mid-March. And I want to be clear that that's a data point that extends through yesterday. So it's 75% of the folks have been paid claimants through yesterday's activity, as opposed to week ending the 24th. Excuse me, 25th. And so I want to be clear that, and Cher alluded to it, within the regular unemployment insurance benefits program, the way it's designed in the state of Colorado, the certification or the payment request is every other week. So the vast majority of the folks that haven't been paid is simply because they haven't arrived at their request window timeline yet. So specifically, anyone that applied for benefits April 16th through the 29th, they will not have met their timeline for first request for payment, because they would go in and certify for the past 2 weeks and they just simply haven't met that window. So some percent of those folks will be able to request payment as soon as this coming Sunday, and then another percent will be able to request payment the subsequent Sunday. And then there's a much smaller percent that there is an issue on their claim that could be related to they haven't verified their ID sufficiently. We take considerable steps to make sure that the people that are filing the claim are actually the people that are getting the benefits. That's important to us. So that is essentially the three reasons that somebody wouldn't have gotten the payment quite yet. And then secondly, Cher talked a little bit about the fraud. I do want to address this head on. Cher effectively articulated the issue with 1099 workers who also have W-2 wages, and they by necessity are being routed to, if they've met the $2,500 threshold, they're being routed to the regular unemployment insurance benefits program. What we're seeing, unfortunately, is some people trying to circumvent that. And so what they'll do is they might go in and file a claim in regular unemployment, and then what they'll do is they'll go into the PUA application and they'll endeavor to, instead of submitting their Social Security number, they'll input a bogus number, such as an EIN, perhaps, and endeavor to go through the application with their proper name, but a different substitute for the Social Security number. Two things you need to be aware of. One is that's not going to work. We have mechanisms, and then further in the application, they will bypass the Experian identity check, thinking that will allow them to get benefits in this program. One you should know is that even if you skip the Experian identity check, we have secondary safeguards that are going to match your Social Security number versus your stated name. So that's not going to work. It's going to hold up payment. The second thing that people need to know is that's fraud, and it will be treated as fraud. So we need your help in getting that word out that A, it's not going to result in any more benefits, and B, it will be treated as fraud, because if you are knowingly entering, it's asking for your Social Security number. If you knowingly enter something that's not your Social Security number, we're going to treat that as fraud. And then do you want me to just segue a little bit into the job refusal, Cher?
Yeah, and we do have a few questions about that, Jeff. So maybe the job refusal, which if you could speak to the employer form that we've posted and what employer resources are out there. And then also this does kind of tie back to a little bit of the emergency rules conversation, so we can tie that into. But yeah, Jeff, job refusals would be great.
Sure. I'll start by saying that job refusals is part of the normal process in unemployment insurance, regardless of the COVID-19 epidemic. And so when you're receiving unemployment insurance benefits, if you get a job offer and you refuse it, it could trigger an issue where it could impact your ability to collect benefits. What we've done is we have run emergency rules to sort of clarify that situation in the COVID-19 circumstance. What we're going to be looking at, we're sensitive to both sides of the equation. Relative to wanting to see some economic activity resume, but also really being focused on the safety and health of the workers. So what we're going to be looking at, essentially, there is no black and white answer to the question of will they stop getting benefits. It really is a situation where it would trigger an event where we would collect facts about the job refusal. So to Cher's point, we've put up a form on the website where if you're an employer and you have called back your employees or you've offered someone a job and they've refused it, you can submit that and it'll prompt an analysis into that situation. But specifically in this unusual circumstance, given COVID-19 and safer at home and depending upon where we are in the state, guidelines that are also being set by mayors and so forth with regards to proper economic activity or allowable economic activity. What we're going to be looking at is a few things, including, what were the conditions and standards of the job to begin with? Did the employer take reasonable steps to provide an environment in which the employee can work safely? Meaning, is there social distancing? Are there masks provided? Are there gloves provided where necessary? So it really is an analysis of are they endeavoring to comply with safer at work, and are the conditions, have they been amended such there might be a possibility that they could come back to work? And then secondly, or thirdly, we're also going to be looking at and giving due consideration to is the individual part of a vulnerable population such that there may not be any conditions at work that would be reasonable for them to return at present, or even are they living in a situation where they're also caring for or living with someone in a vulnerable population. So that's not an all-inclusive list, but those are some of the factors we're going to be looking at in terms of whether this person might continue with unemployment insurance benefits or not.
And I would just add that we had a question from a reporter yesterday on what documentation would be required if somebody says that they don't feel safe returning to work, maybe citing their own personal health concerns, and would we require a doctor's note? And certainly it's case by case, as all unemployment is, but that is not a requirement. But certainly if the employer contests the job refusal, depending on the reason, then certainly that could be something we would ask for. So if that is the circumstance where you have an underlying health issue, certainly whatever documentation you have, if your employer does not agree to that refusal to return to work, would probably help your cause. So let's just, if we could, you talked about the 75% claims. You talked about, we'll end with how to file a successful claim, but let's just go back up to the questions. So yes, Colleen, those 40,906, those are applications filed since we launched the system on Monday the 20th. Actually, the whole universe of applications filed is larger than that, but just like with regular unemployment, we're trying to give official data sets that we report to the U.S. Department of Labor. So it's actually greater than 40,000, but those claims of the balance have not yet been through the process. So here forward, we're going to really try and compare regular unemployment and the federal benefits with the same, with a similar data set, which is those initial claim filings, which are our official data set that we send to the U.S. Department of Labor on a weekly basis. County by county numbers will be coming out. Ryan, this is our question of the week. And that doesn't come out today, but there are the latest numbers that we do have on LMI Gateway and also on the department's website. So I'll let Ryan speak to that in a minute. Just overall, Vinny, how is the department, the division functioning? I think, again, the fact that we are closing in on, at some point soon, 400,000 claims, when on March 9th we had 400. And we've also stood up a brand new system for accepting applications in a very short period of time, and are also paying benefits on those claims. I'd say overall, it's working. Of course, there are some issues, and that kind of could lead us to the payment and the debit card issues that I saw we had a question on. So I would say for the most part, we are meeting that 72-hour window. We were behind on that last week because of again, that file transfer issue I mentioned, and we updated you all on the press call. This week, we've had, with a smaller number of claimants impacted, issues with the debit card. But these were mostly those claimants who were filing when the application went live for weeks in arrears. And so while we were delayed in getting those weeks in arrears benefit payments loaded, it did not dramatically impact, again, this is pandemic unemployment assistance, those actual benefit payments where they're certifying for recent weeks of unemployment. And Jeff, you can correct me if I'm wrong on any of that, but that's kind of where we are with benefit payments.
No, I would only add to this very point, we're encouraging, and it gets into successful filing, we are encouraging, if it is a possibility for you to default to the direct deposit option, it's the means that's going to get you your benefits the quickest. So that's one of our tips too. So it's just going to be a smoother process, and then that way you're also not reliant on the U.S. mail to get the physical debit card itself. So that's something that I would certainly encourage to help benefits get into people's banks quicker.
Yeah, and with the pandemic unemployment assistance, you actually need to wait 24 hours. So it defaults to a debit card for your benefits upon filing of the application, but you can go in within 20 or after 24 hours and change that to direct deposit. And again, as Jeff said, we're suggesting everybody choose direct deposit because right now it's proving to be the best way to receive your benefits. So I think we addressed the return to work job refusals, but let's see, because I think we got Andy's question. Again, those emergency rules are on our website at coloradoui.gov. The intersection with PPP and unemployment has been one we've gotten a lot of questions on that. Mostly we have questions from employers who have been approved for their PPP loans. Their workers are on unemployment, and now they're asking those workers to return. And as we mentioned earlier, some of them are choosing not to return for a variety of reasons. And again, those reasons are covered in the emergency rule. The fact that you earn more on unemployment, unfortunately, would not make you eligible to continue on unemployment. That would be considered a job refusal if your employer is asking you to return to work. Let's see. So Ryan, do you want to speak just real quickly on county level claims data, and again, point folks to where they can find those and about our cadence for releasing those weekly on Friday?
Sure. It's built into my talking points, but yeah, I'm happy to do that. Again, we're looking to post county level data, industry level data for the state, also demographic, that's age, race, and ethnicity and sex. It's a lot of data to process. We really get the base report around noon, 1 o'clock on Friday. So trying to process all of that and giving a reasonable time to provide that data. 5 p.m. is really kind of really reasonable for that. I got a question on county level. Will county level be regular UI and a PUA? At this point, I'm going to say we probably won't be able to provide that type of data from PUA system, maybe down the road, but as of this time, I wouldn't expect PUA data to be available at anything other than the aggregate number we provide in our press release.
So Jeff, we do have some call center volume calls. Maybe you can update on our new call center, our additional call center, staffing, call volume, and then we can circle back to a few questions and then perhaps turn it over to Ryan.
Sure, happy to do that, Chair. So a little bit of review. Internally, we augmented our call center, just about double the original volume that we had. So more than 160 staff that are working that call center. And then very recently, we stood up a secondary call center designed specifically to help out with the pandemic unemployment assistance claims. That's also got about 90 staff that are working those lines. So that's been successful. We recognize that there is still quite a demand. But between those two call centers, they're each handling somewhere between 2,500 to 3,000 calls per day. So that's 5,000 to 6,000 calls between the two that they're handling. So it's been effective at dealing with a mass of calls. Recognize that may not necessarily be, given the most acute spike in claims we have ever seen. It can't address all of the call volume immediately. So one of the things that we've also done is we added a callback form on the website. So if you're having trouble getting through and you need help with a couple different areas in terms of your claim, you can fill out that form, and we will ask you kindly not to continue calling us, but rather give us a couple business days to get back to you. So we've got a dedicated team that is working the callbacks as well. So that's another avenue that folks can use that we think is going to be effective in ensuring that people understand that we know that you need to talk to us, and register what you need done, and we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can while we're continuing to answer the phones that are coming in.
Thanks, Jeff. So a couple of other things, and then we have some more job refusal questions. In terms of the number of job refusals, I don't know that we have any claimant data on that right now. I can tell you that the form that we stood up last week to receive employer concerns about job refusals, at last count, I think I saw just over a couple of dozen, if not more. Actually, it was more than 40 employers that had submitted concerns that their workers are choosing not to return to work. Some of those were actual resigning their positions, though. So these weren't all necessarily legitimate job refusals. It seems like some people are just choosing not to go back. I just don't think we have any data aside from that on the prevalence of job refusals right now, but certainly as folks are asked to return to work, we will have some more data to share and kind of what the employer community is feeling. The other thing I forgot to mention, in addition to the additional call center and the online form, we stood up a chatbot function on our website within the last week or so, and it really just started populating and getting more informed in the last probably 5 to 7 days. And so the chatbot function basically responds to the most frequently asked questions because it's pulling the content from our website. So the more questions you ask, the more knowledge it has and is able to return with a response to that question. And then we had, as most of you know, a town hall series. When we launched the PUA application in English and Spanish, we had over 20,000 for the English call and I think several thousand for the Spanish call. It's a tool that's very useful because we can actually target those individuals who attempted to call our call center and still need assistance. And we actually do an outbound call campaign to them, inviting them to the town hall so that they can perhaps get information from a one-to-many from the department on items that we're seeing in terms of frequently asked questions coming into our call center. And those issues right now are, again, the W-2 and 1099 dual income issues. Where do I apply? A few identity verification issues. As I mentioned before, there's an Experian identity check within the new application to help prevent identity theft. It's not a credit check. We're also seeing questions again about why am I filing in one application versus the other? So we're explaining the difference. And so our goal is to kind of capture the top 5 or so issues that are top of mind to claimants and then speak in that kind of one-to-many forum. And we're planning on holding one next week, likely on Monday, but I'll send out a press release when we have the details, and the online registration form is up and running. And the previous town hall forums in English and Spanish are on the coloradoui.gov homepage. Let's see. Let me go ahead, if we could just about, since we're halfway through, take a pause. Before I turn it over to Ryan, just keep things in mind. Claimant education around what makes a successful claim and payment benefit request. Providing accurate information, even if it's their address, email address, obviously social, as accurate as possible. We do see some name change issues come in about there was a typo on my 1099 or my name was misspelled when I put it into the application, what have you, a variety of just more technical or spelling errors. So ensure accurate information. Respond to all emails from the division. Check your spam folder. Also, again, choose direct deposit over a debit card if possible, if you have a checking account. And hopefully those things, while we know the system continues to be overloaded, we do think there's some things that claimants can do on their end to ensure a successful claim and benefit payment. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan, and then Jeff and I can circle back with any of the questions that we missed. The URL for the callback form, again, if it's coloradoui.gov, it's accessible through either the regular file a claim page or the PUA application page. And because that is a file a claim assistance tool, it is on those file a claim pages. So that's where you can find that new form. So Ryan, take it away.
Thanks, Cher. As always with this press call, I'll start off with my lead talking points, and then we'll go into the data. The Colorado Department of Labor and Employment has identified a number of statewide unemployment insurance statistics we would like to highlight during these weekly press calls and releases. I will go over each statistic, provide some historical context, and then lend some guidance on how to interpret the data's meaning and significance. And as always, these are the most recent data available at this time. Starting last week, the department was able to start processing and paying benefits related to pandemic unemployment assistance, or PUA, which is for those self-employed, contract, and gig workers not traditionally covered under unemployment insurance. Additionally, the department began paying federal pandemic unemployment compensation last week, which provides an additional $600 per week in unemployment benefits to every eligible claimant. I will try to incorporate these new data when appropriate. I will also mostly refer to traditional state claims activity as regular UI. The data I will discuss comes from 2 sources: a federally required report the department submits to the Employment and Training Administration every week, and statistics generated for internal use and analysis. I will begin with the data we submit to the Employment and Training Administration on a weekly basis. These data are the official estimates for unemployment insurance claims activity for Colorado. Every state is required to submit this information, so these data are comparable across area and time. The headline data are initial claims. An initial claim is one filed to establish eligibility for unemployment benefits. Initial claim data released on a 1-week lag, so the most recent data available is for the week ending April 25th. The state processed 38,384 regular UI initial claims for the week ending April 25th. Additionally, 40,906 PUA initial claims were processed last week, bringing the total number of initial claims for the week of the 25th to 79,290. About 780,000 initial claims have been filed in Colorado since mid-March, when you include both regular and PUA activity. I had a question too about, our claims peaking. Again, when you combine regular with the PUA, we're still looking at 80,000 claims. So it's, the data is kind of indicating it might be peaking, but I think it's still too early. I think we still need a couple more weeks to see, when you add in regular UI and PUA, what's our total claim level. So that's something to definitely look out for the coming weeks. The next set of data are continued claims. Continued claim is filed weekly after eligibility has been established through an initial claim. Not all weeks claimed result in payment because a claimant may not be available to work, may have earnings that exceeded the allowed amount, or other reasons. Continued claim data are released on a 2-week lag. The most recent data available is for the week ending April 18th. The state had around 228,000 continued claims for the week of the 18th, which represents a 33% increase from the week prior. The average number of regular UI continued claims over the past 4 weeks has been 160,000. The weekly average of regular UI continued claims during 2009 and 2010 was 67,600. However, this figure expands to 118,000 per week if continued claims from federal UI extension programs were included. The insured unemployment rate, or IUR, continues to rise rapidly as a result of the steep increase in the number of continued claims. As a reminder, the IUR incorporates regular UI continued claims data from the most recent 13-week period and estimates the share of UI-covered workforce claiming unemployment insurance benefits. The insured unemployment rate is also on a 2-week lag, so most recent data available is from the week ending April 18th. The insured unemployment rate for the week of the 18th was 2.42%. This represents the highest level for Colorado's IUR in 8 years. If regular UI continued claims for the week ending April 25th were also around 228,000, then I think it's possible we could see an IUR of 3% for that week. And now I'll shift to those data generated for internal use and analysis. As previously stated, not all weeks claimed result in payment. However, we do have data for weeks paid. Number of weeks paid are on a 1-week lag, and the most recent data available is for the week ending April 25th. Weeks paid totaled 227,505 for the week of the 18th. That single week would represent about a quarter of all weeks paid in 2019, just to kind of give you an idea of the size for that week. Those weeks paid out, that works out to $86.1 million in regular UI benefits paid for week ending April 25th. The state has paid out over $250 million in regular UI benefits since late March. The average weekly benefit amount for regular UI recipients during that period is around $386. Approximately $29 million in benefits were paid out to PUA recipients for the week of the 25th. This amount includes backdated benefits for weeks prior to April 25th. A little over $247 million in federal pandemic unemployment compensation were distributed to PUA, and regular UI recipients for the week of April 25th. You want a breakout for that? PUA recipients received $34 million in federal pandemic unemployment compensation, while regular UI recipients, that amount was $213 million on an aggregate. Remember, this adds an additional $600 per week in unemployment benefits to every eligible claimant. This amount also includes backdated benefits for weeks prior to April 25th. Next, I will discuss detailed initial claims data, specifically Colorado industry level claims and total claims by county. I can also try to answer demographic or occupational questions if anyone has one they would like to ask during this call or even after. Again, like I mentioned earlier, though, these data going forward, I really only expect those to reflect regular UI benefits, not benefits, but initial claims. If we happen to get PUA activity, I'll be certain to let you guys know, but for the time being, definitely expect these data just to reflect regular UI activity. Due to timing and definitional differences, all these detailed claim statistics vary from the official figures submitted to the Employment Training Administration weekly. Therefore, they should not be directly compared to the statewide initial claims estimates. These detailed claims data are available on a 3-week lag. The most recent data currently available is for the week ending April 11th. Publicly available data for the week of April 11th are already available on www.colmigateway.com. And you can find pretty easily on the homepage where the link is to the actual data. And I also provided it in the comments, the chat thread here. Data for the week of April 18th should be updated tomorrow, but please don't expect to have access to that data until after 5 p.m. at the earliest. 86% of claims filed over the past 4 weeks, again, that's through April 11th, have come from the 17 counties attached to metropolitan statistical areas. The 5 non-metro counties that have recorded the most initial claims over the past 4 weeks, those are Eagle, Summit, Garfield, La Plata, and Routt. Those counties make up an additional 7% of claims filed during that period. I don't have much to add for industry sectors, as the top 5 for the week of the 11th are the same as in prior weeks. Again, that's accommodation and food services, retail trade, healthcare and social assistance, arts, entertainment and recreation, and other services. At a detailed industry level, the top 5 number of claims over the past 4 weeks have been in restaurants and other eating places, traveler accommodation, other amusement and recreation industries, so that includes ski resorts, offices of dentists, and personal care services. About 40% of all claims during that period have originated from those 5 detailed industries. And in comparison, those industries made up about 9% of initial claims in 2019. And oil and gas claims continue to rise significantly. Over 1,850 initial claims have been filed over the past 4 weeks. Again, that's through April 11th. And those are industries we can easily identify as being directly tied to oil and gas. So that includes oil and gas extraction, drilling oil and gas wells, support activities for oil and gas operations, oil and gas pipeline and related structures construction, and pipeline transportation. Now that exceeds any 4-week total filed in that industry during 2015 when oil last fell below $30 a barrel. And during that time, that 4-week total peaked at around 1,100. And I do just want to, real quick before I forget, I do have a question, do we have data on type of claimant, self-employed, or language spoken? We do not have data on language spoken for claimants. And for self-employed, again, that's going to be tied to PUA. And as I mentioned, I'm doubtful that we'll be able to provide PUA. But if we are, I'll certainly let you guys know.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Just circling back to see if there's any lingering issue out there we haven't addressed. A quick reminder, the April numbers will come out on May 22nd. And again, we report on a lag, and that's probably the release where you'll see capturing a lot of activity on COVID-19's impact to the workforce. Ryan, if there's anything else you want to add about why that release will be particularly useful about the survey of establishments or any other data points, but we've been kind of, indicating all along while there was a lot of interest in the March numbers, it's really the April numbers we think will also show what's happened since mid-March.
Right. Again, that'll be our employment situation. We'll release our job numbers and our labor force unemployment numbers. Those will be by county and for the states. As I mentioned before, our reference week is for the week or pay period containing the 12th. So that will be for the 12th of April when we are certainly in the thick of layoff activity and COVID-related closures. Again, while we did see a significant uptick in the March unemployment rate, I expect the April unemployment rate to go up even higher because of just where we are in the COVID-19 timeline.
We did have another follow-up about benefit payment amounts and just aggregate numbers. They are in the press release. So breakout of dollar amount of benefits paid down to a distinction between federal and pandemic benefits. So I'm happy to go over those, or Ryan can, the data points again that were in the press release. But I refer to that was sent out this morning at 7:30. Ryan, the quick comparison of kind of where we are in terms of benefit payouts on a weekly basis based on where we were during the Great Recession, that contrast, can you just go over that again real quick?
In terms of how much we've paid out in benefits?
Yeah. Just
sure. So again, the amount we've paid out, and as I mentioned, since late March, we've paid out just in regular UI benefits, $250 million. The record, well, previous record, April will break that, was a little over 100 million in benefits paid out, and that was in May. Let me check here. I don't want to get it wrong. Yeah, May of 2009, the state paid out around 102.8 million in regular UI benefits. So that just kind of shows you just the massive amount of benefits that have been paid out, and then when you add in the federal programs, again, we're talking 29 million paid out to PUA recipients, and then nearly 250 in federal pandemic unemployment compensation. Now, again, those are being paid out through federal money. So regular UI will come directly from the UI Trust Fund. But again, that's 250 million in about a 4.5-5 week span.
And we had a question. So are you saying that's since late March. So that's adding up. Basically, we're talking the week ending April 4th, week ending April 11th, week ending April 18th, week ending April 25th. I believe we identified all those individual weekly payouts in our press release as well. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. It's 250 million over that time period. Yes, that's for the state of Colorado. Sorry, Cher. No, you got it.
Questions.
There are a lot of questions about how workers' comp intersects with unemployment, and I don't know. I'm not the best person to answer that question, and I don't know if Jeff is, but we can certainly follow up with any specifics. Jeff, do you have any knowledge on the two, how they work together or perhaps don't work together?
Yeah, so what I will say, because it's nuanced and it will need to be identified and dealt with on a case-by-case basis. So that's one where it's a circumstance that needs to be analyzed by one of my agents, and then that'll help determine the level of benefits. Can I circle back on a couple? I think I've answered most of the questions either privately in chat or through our dialogue today. But there's a couple I think that would be helpful for me to address. Can I do that now, Cher?
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Sure. So the question was with regards to job refusal. Again, will we look at if a person lives in a place where there is stricter order or more relaxed order? And I sort of hit on it in my opening, but I'll reiterate it. Yes is the short answer. So we're going to be looking at the guidelines that have been provided by Governor Polis regarding safer at home. And then, of course, we're going to be looking if there's local direction provided by local officials that are creating perhaps more strict scenarios for those areas, then absolutely we'd be looking at those too. And then also on job refusal, someone asks, are there the same standards in place for UI versus PUA? The short answer is most likely no. Bear in mind that PUA, in most instances, not all, and I'll address the other part of this, but in most instances, it's going to be 1099 workers self-employed. So a condition of them receiving benefits isn't that they are offered jobs and they have to then resume W-2 employment. So that's not a condition. So different universe of people for the most part. Now, there may be a subsection of W-2 employees that end up on pandemic unemployment assistance because they've exhausted their regular UI benefits, or they fit into a category very specific to PUA related to COVID-19. If that is the case, and they are a traditional W-2 employee, then yes, the same job refusal analysis would happen for those individuals, just as if they were on regular UI.
Ryan, I think there are a couple questions about the reference week. Wayne had a question about which week are we using as our baseline. He had a question. Was it March 12th?
Right. So we're talking about the April reference week. So the week, the 12th for April falls on a Sunday. So again, that reference week is going to be the 12th to the 18th, in which we're basically, with the current population survey, we'll be asking individuals questions on their employment status, which will help inform our estimates. So that'll be the period for that. For the job numbers, again, it's going to be the pay period containing the week of the 12th. So that may be that week. If it's, if you're on a weekly schedule, could be a larger time span if you're, say, on a biweekly payroll as well. So that one's a little less defined in terms of the job numbers. I also have a question. Nope, we don't have a question.
The press release, we only highlight the top 5 industries with the highest number of claims, but we go into greater detail. And there's more data available at lmigateway.com. And I think we answered this, but Ryan, any indication claims are peaking?
Right. So as I said, now we're going to be combining PUA claims with regular UI claims. The weekending of the 25th, we were at 79,000, which, other than that week where we had over 100,000 regular UI claims, which again, I think I explained as being mainly due to a backlog issue. I would still say claims are very high. And I think we need a couple more weeks of data to see, or really determine, have, claims peaked. And even if it drops down to, say, 50,000 or 30,000, that's still historically high. So it also kind of depends on what we mean by peak. But, I think it's likely, given the volume we've seen over the past 5 weeks, that we're going to see some sort of decline from, say, that 100,000 over these next couple of weeks.
Some questions about reduction in wages but not hours and eligibility. Jeff, I don't know if you want to take that question. So somebody has had a reduction in pay but not hours.
Right. So I just answered that privately, okay. But essentially the answer is that if your salary has simply been cut, that's not something we're going to be looking at necessarily. So it's really based upon, are you working less than full time? If your normal condition was full time and you're working less than full time, then it's going to be problematic for you to be able to apply for benefits just based on a reduction in pay. That's not really what unemployment insurance is intended to do, because as you can imagine, in very normal circumstances, people have reduction in pays all the time. So the best thing to do would be to speak to your employer and say, as opposed to me working full-time and getting half my pay, could I work 50% of my hours and get my normal rate of pay? And then that way the individual could orchestrate a situation where they would more likely be eligible for benefits.
That's a great maybe case study for WorkShare. If employers are looking at workforce reduction, we've been really trying to promote our WorkShare program. And I don't have the latest numbers of participants within that program, but on the last call, we had about less than a dozen pre-COVID and upwards of over 700 now. So that program, again, allows employers to still reduce their workforce and share the reduction across their workers such that their workers are eligible for partial unemployment benefits. And that continues to be, I think, one of the tools that is looked at from employers in advance of a total workforce reduction or layoff scenario. And so we're happy. Jeff, maybe in the future press releases, that might be a good data point that we include, is just an update on workforce work share participation. So I think we can close out. Just a couple reminders. Information on the town hall will be at coloradoui.gov. English and Spanish, looking at Monday, but I'll send a press release out probably today with more details on that. The new communications tools we've launched in the last week, the additional call center, the claimant callback request form, the chatbot functionality, and continuing to explore ways that we can address that call center activity, because it certainly continues to sustain record levels with people needing very specific claimant questions addressed, and understand the frustration of folks not being able to get those questions answered, and continue to explore ways to address that volume. Yes, we will make sure. So again, the callback form, you can enter either through the file a claim regular unemployment, file a PUA claim, and then about, I think it's maybe halfway down the page, is a request a callback. Okay. Okay, well then, if I didn't get to your question or you have follow-ups, just shoot me an email or a text. You can always reply also to that PR account. We had to create a separate account to just help me manage the volume of inquiries coming in, but that's CDLE_PR at state.co.us. And again, I think if there are no other questions, we will conclude the call. And thanks so much for checking in with us, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.